You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at that very website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, right here in Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for April 15th, 2025. It's not safe for work.
This is recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, and it's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal, and we're going to jump right into today's news because that's what we're going to do today, because it's a little bit of a more serious episode. This is from the Illinois Times. This is what's happening right now all around us. Quote, waves of Illinois International University students lose their visas. Illinois hosts one of the largest international student populations in the nation, ranking 5th. The federal government has revoked the visas of some international students studying at universities across Illinois, but college administrators are sharing few details, including how many students have been impacted. A spokesman for the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign this week confirmed that some of its students are affected, but did not disclose the number. U of I ranks 6th nationally in the size of its international student body at over 15,000 students, unquote.
And a lot of them are doing really important research.
Yeah, these are all people who want to be here, who are good students, and who we are terrorizing for no goddamn good reason other than our neighbors are racist who elected a lunatic.
Yep. This is from the New Republic. Quote, even though SCOTUS has ordered Abrego Garcia's return to the U.S., the Trump administration is hiding behind semantics and technicalities, while El Salvador's president/dictator flippantly refuses to return him, unquote. And now that it's clear that this was all a stupid, tragic mistake, and probably just the tip of the iceberg of people the Trump brown shirts have snatched off the street and disappeared into a foreign gulag. Clearly, the only solution is to keep ratcheting up the lies and attacking anyone who questions anything the dear leader says. And remember, the only reason this lunatic is in office again is because our racist Republican neighbors and colleagues and family members put him there.
Yep, that's the reason. Never let that leave your mind. This is from the Daily Mail. Quote, a Trump official has defended the administration's decision to ignore court rulings and about returning the deported El Salvadorian immigrant to the United States by likening him to Osama bin Laden. Yeah, because it's time to go there. Department of Homeland Security spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin hit out those referring to Kilmar Abrego Garcia as a Maryland father. I think this illegal alien is exactly where he belongs, home in El Salvador, McLaughlin told Fox, of course. He was in our country illegally. No, he was not. He's from El Salvador. He was born in El Salvador. And the media forgot to mention he's an MS-13 gang member, which is a flat-out fucking lie. The media would love for you to believe this is a media darling and it's just a Maryland father. Well, Osama bin Laden was also a father, and yet he wasn't a good guy, and they're actually both terrorists, unquote. Again, bald-faced, flat-out lies that should have her thrown from a 10-story building tomorrow if this were a just country.
Well, and he should sue her for defamation when he gets back to the United States.
When he gets back to the United States, yeah.
Yeah, there should be a whole lot of people paying him millions and millions of dollars so that his 3 disabled kids have nothing to worry about for the rest of their lives. And when CNN's Caitlin Collins attempted to question Trump and his goons about it, again from the Daily Mail, quote, rarely in its 116-year history has the Oval Office been the scene of such brutal trash talk from a commander-in-chief. President Donald Trump on Monday ridiculed CNN's Caitlin Collins at the White House as he met with President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador. Let's not start with CNN because they are just so wrong, Trump began, as the pair took questions from the press where Collins was present. After several journalists asked the president questions, Trump pointed to Collins. Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CNN, he said. How long do we have to answer this question from you, Trump said. Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Collins asked a follow-up, asking if Trump would abide by the high court's ruling. He further taunted her network. Why do you go over and over? That's why no one watches you anymore. You have no credibility, Trump said. President Bukele questioned Trump why the news media in the United States did not report the good numbers on the border more often. Trump said there was a 99.1% border enforcement at the southern border and complained that the media had no interest in reporting the good news. Well, they get out, but the fake news, like CNN over here, doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers because I think they hate our country, actually, Trump continued, unquote. Wherever anyone challenges the dear leader, you'll find him lashing out and issuing the kind of threats that only a dictator could get away with.
Yeah, this is from the Economic Times. Quote, U.S. President Donald Trump went on his social media site, Truth Social, on Sunday night in an angry rant against CBS and its parent company, Paramount, after reviewing the latest episode of 60 Minutes, unquote. He repeated this bogus claim about his frivolous lawsuit against, quote-unquote, 60, then relayed his message to his FCC chair, and here's what he wrote. They should lose their license. Hopefully the Federal Communication Commission's, FCC for the spelling challenge, as headed by its highly respected chairman, Brendan Carr, will impose the maximum fines and punishment, which is substantial, for their unlawful and illegal behavior. CBS is out of control at levels never before seen, and they should pay a big price for this, unquote.
And this is they had Vladimir Zelensky on for an interview. That was what they did that pissed him off so much.
This is straight up Stalinist bullshit. Punishing people for telling the truth, punishing people for mentioning things that Trump doesn't want mentioned on television.
Yep. This is from the Rolling Stone. Quote, in 2 executive orders, Trump ordered senior government officials, including Attorney General Pam Bondi, to investigate Miles Taylor, a former Trump Homeland Security official who wrote the famous Trump Trashing Anonymous op-ed and book, and Chris Krebs, who had been a top cybersecurity official who infuriated Trump and other Republicans by refusing to co-sign the then-president's democracy-subverting lies that he had won the 2020 race against Joe Biden. The Department of Justice is then required to report the results of these investigations to the Trump White House.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't find anything, they have to go find something. That's what's going on.
Keep looking until you find what I want you to find.
Yep. In signing the orders on Wednesday, Trump told the cameras and the assembled press that I think he's guilty of treason, referring to Taylor, and of course, citing zero evidence for such an egregious statement. Before signing the Krebs order, the president falsely insisted that it had been proven that Krebs was wrong, thus wielding the powers of the executive branch to cement the lie, which got people killed on January 6, 2021, that Trump had won the 2020 presidential contest into Republican Party ideology and current federal policy. The president also used the televised moment to endorse carrying out further crackdowns on expanded voting rights, and also claimed that the U.S. political press is not free, presumably because it is too mean to him.
Poor Donald. Donald.
It is woefully unclear, which may be the point, what conceivable crimes these 2 men could have committed that would warrant publicly announced federal probes of them. Specifically, it appears their primary offense was each pissing off Trump in the media by, particularly in Krebs' case, stating demonstrably true things in the face of Trump's efforts to steal an election he had clearly lost. Donald Trump needed to send a message, a White House official explains to Rolling Stone, adding that the public executive order branded nature of it was in large part because Trump had said he wanted to deliver a warning to others on his enemies list. It's true, he technically didn't need to sign an executive order, but he wanted to make a TV show out of it. That's what it was. Another Trump administration official adds that the president's showmanship qualities practically necessitated, at least for this administration, a televised salvo of vengeance, unquote.
Because the mob will not tolerate anything less anymore.
Yeah.
They need to see him punishing people who are innocent, making people cry.
And at some point, we need to do a show about how this entire administration is the Truman Show on Fox.
Yeah.
They are cosplaying a presidential administration for the Fox audience.
Except there are real-world consequences.
And then there are real-world consequences. Yep. Exactly. That is the problem.
Yeah. And the Fox News hate radio bubble is now so hermetically sealed that nothing we say or do gets in.
No.
at all.
Yeah.
They just believe what they want to believe, and they vote the way they want to vote, and they're unreachable robots at this point.
And let me add to that I called something 3 days before it happened this week, in that Trump went after the law firm that got the $787 million from Fox.
Yes.
And he's now trying to persecute and prosecute this law firm that got that settlement from Fox News because they lied about Dominion, right? Fox lied about Dominion.
Yep.
And they agreed to pay. Fox News agreed to pay Dominion $787 million.
Yes, nearly a billion. Nearly a billion dollars. Mm-hmm.
To make this go away and not have to expose in an open court all of the things that their employees said and did.
Yeah, it was cheaper to them. It was
cheaper
better
for them
business
to do that than to lose the credibility to their audience of everything that Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and all these people were saying. Okay,
putting them on the stand would be
worse with cameras in the courtroom under oath, which everyone on Fox should be under oath at all times. But anyway, So Trump's going after the law firm that did that, and I said on Blue Sky, Trump doesn't get it that Fox doesn't want anyone reminded of this.
Well, no. Well, now it's just him.
Then, yeah, right. And so 3 days later, Media Matters has an article about Fox is completely ignoring this Trump executive order. Right. La, 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 la.
Shut up. Well, no.
Shut up.
The Fox News is the launch gantry for Trump. Mm-hmm. And now that he's a rocket and he's in the air and he's heading towards population centers, they don't need the gantry anymore. He doesn't need him. What does he need with them anymore? What are they going to do? No. They're going to impeach him. Right, they're going to call him stupid. They're going to declare they'd never supported him. The mob will turn against them, and the mob will then move over to someplace else that will tell them what they want to hear. Fox News is trapped in a deadfall
until he dies. Yeah, until he dies.
Well, until he dies, then they just have another script for how to rewrite that into tragic history.
Well, and we all know what happened to Sarah Palin the day after John McCain lost. Yeah. All of a sudden, all these stories on Fox about how Sarah Palin didn't know that Africa was a continent.
Right.
How long did you know that, Peter Ducey? You knew that for a long time.
The Republican Khrushchev will show up, and he will weep 3 tears over the death of Stalin.
Right.
And then we're going to move forward now. We will honor him, and we'll put up posters, and we're going to put up statues, and we're going to have a state funeral, but we're going to move on. And Fox
and J.D. Vance, who doesn't have the juice, is going to have to purge that cabinet.
Yeah. Well,
because the Night of Long Knives has got to be him taking them out and not vice versa.
And there is an example in history that we're going to get to of a violent, one of the worst, most violent, most depraved dictatorships in human history. Mm-hmm. Came to an end because it destroyed itself so utterly that there was nobody next in line because they were all dead or they were all on trial. Yeah. That's Nazi Germany. And this is where it gets a little heavy, but I think it's worth reviewing and discussing where we are now and where we're not, how far this has gone and how far it hasn't gone. Mm-hmm. And a year ago, I just want to remind everyone, a year ago on episode, if you want to look it up, 787, it was entitled No Fair Remembering What Trump Did Yesterday, which is still fucking true. Mm-hmm. We discussed a segment of this book, They Thought They Were Free, The Germans, 1933 to 1945, by Milton Mayer. Now, this was March of 2024. And we talked about that book by way of a warning about what was coming if Trump were elected. This is the road down which we are now going. Now, we underscored the point that the difference between us now and the Germans in the essay was the Germans had no example from which to learn what was happening to them. They couldn't draw on history, or they didn't want to. But we have no such excuses. We have the example of the rise of fascism in Germany to learn from. And a lot of us did. And it turns out a whole bunch of people in this country like that system, want that government, and are willing to vote it into office. The reason so many of us were feeling so disoriented and angry was that we could see this gradual process of violent, racist, fascistic, rhetorical escalation happening in real time all around us. That's why we were so alarmed by what we were seeing. And well, as you know, it's now a year later, and 77 million of our fellow citizens have finally stopped pretending and came out and proud as American fascists. And they put Trump back into office. They voted for Trump a third time and put him back into office. So this excerpt is about the process we're now going through together. This is from They Thought They Were Free. And the chapter title, if you're looking it up online or you're looking for the book, which is a very good book, the chapter title is But Then It Was Too Late. Mm-hmm. Quote, what no one seemed to notice, said a colleague of mine, a philologist, was the ever-widening gap after 1933 between the government and the people. Just think how very wide this gap was to begin with here in Germany. And it became always wider. You know, it doesn't make people close to their government to be told that this is a people's government, a true democracy, or to be enrolled in a civilian defense, or even vote. All this has little, really nothing to do with knowing one is governing. What happened here was the gradual habituation of the people, little by little, to being governed by surprise, to receiving decisions deliberated in secret, to believing that the situation was so complicated that the government had to act on information which the people could not understand, or so dangerous that even if the people could not understand it, it could not be released because of national security. And their sense of identification with Hitler, their trust in him, made it easier to widen this gap and reassured those who would otherwise have worried about it. This separation of government from people, this widening of the gap, took place so gradually and so insensibly, each step disguised, perhaps not even intentionally, as a temporary emergency measure or associated with true patriotic allegiance or with some real social purposes. And all the crises and reforms, real reforms too, so occupied the people that they did not see the slow motion underneath of the whole process of government growing remoter and remoter. You will understand me when I say that my middle-high German was my life. It was all I cared about. I was a scholar, a specialist. Then, suddenly, I was plunged into all this new activity as the university was drawn into the new situation. Meetings, conferences, interviews, ceremonies, and above all, papers to be filled out, reports, bibliographies, lists, questionnaires. On top of that were the demands in the community, the things which one had to do, was expected to participate that had not been there or had not been important before. It was all rigmarole, of course, but it consumed all one's energies, coming on top of the work one really wanted to do. You can see how easy it was then not to think about fundamental things. One had no time. Mm-hmm. Those, I said, are the words of my friend the baker. One had no time to think. There was so much going on. Your friend the baker was right, said my colleague. The dictatorship and the whole process of its coming into being was above all diverting. It provided an excuse not to think for people who did not want to think anyway. I do not speak of your little men, your baker and so on. I speak of my colleagues and myself. Learned men, mind you. Most of us did not want to think about fundamental things and never had. There was no need to. Nazism gave us some dreadful, fundamental things to think about. We were decent people and kept us so busy, continuous changes and crises, and so fascinated, yes, fascinated, by the machinations of the national enemies within and without, that we had no time to think about these dreadful things that were growing little by little all around us. Unconsciously, I suppose, we were grateful. Who wants to think? Unquote.
Who wants to think?
Yeah. And all of the things that were just poured over the head of the public and people in professional situations, all the stuff that was being done to universities, all the internal enemies to worry about, all the announcements, in our case, all the tariffs, all the immigrants, all the MS-13s, and it's all the time. There's no let up. It's just a fucking fire hose all the time. It's always an emergency. It's always an executive order. And there's always another one.
Yep. And it's always a show. There's always the show to watch and report on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. If you have studied any history at all, you should find this very sobering. This is from the 1961 Stanley Kramer film Judgment at Nuremberg.
Only when you understand that can you understand what Hitler meant to us. Because he said to us, lift your heads. Be proud to be German. There are devils among us. Communists, liberals, Jews, gypsies. Once these devils will be destroyed, your misery will be destroyed. It was the old, old story of the sacrificial lamb. What about those of us who knew better? We who knew the words were lies and worse than lies? Why did we sit silent? Why did we take part? Because we loved our country. What difference does it make if a few political extremists lose their rights? What difference does it make if a few racial minorities lose their rights? It is only a passing phase. It is only a stage we are going through. It will be discarded sooner or later. Hitler himself will be discarded sooner or later. The country is in danger. We will march out of the shadows. We will go forward. Forward is the great password. And history tells how well we succeeded, Your Honor. We succeeded beyond our wildest dream.
But there is some good news out there, too, because we're not quite there yet. We're heading down the road, but the road hasn't come to its end. And from governors in blue states to average Americans to, can you believe it, Harvard goddamn University, people are in fact pushing back. The April 5th hands-off protest took place in over 1,400 locations across all 50 U.S. states and drew an estimated 3.5 million participants nationwide. According to demonstration coordinators, the protests involve a coalition of over 150 progressive, labor union, pro-democracy, civil rights, LGBTQ+, and women's rights groups. And the next ones will be even bigger.
Yeah, they will. Mm-hmm. They will. Driftglass knows this about me, and some of you may know this about me as well, but I study the Bible regularly.
Yes, you do.
I'm a Christian, and I do. I study the Bible regularly. And this week, the readings that I'm doing are for Easter. And happy Holy Week to everyone that celebrates Easter. Mm-hmm. The lesson this week, to my mind, just reading the Passion of Jesus and everything that happened, the thing that really jumped out at me this week was Jesus asking God to not have to do this, to not have to be crucified. And God doesn't answer because the only way out is through. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not saying all of us have to be crucified, but all of us have to wake up and realize the only way out of this is through it.
Yep.
And that means fighting.
Yep.
I feel like a very old soldier, Driftglass.
Yeah, both you and me both.
You and I have been watching World War II dramatizations this week.
Yes, we have.
And we can't fight the last war.
No, we can learn from it. We can learn from it,
though. Yes, and this is something you've said many times: is Bush walked so Trump could run.
Yeah.
But we're not, even though us old school bloggers still have our blog posts and our. You're going through looking at your 20-year-old blog posts, which is so fun to see you doing that and coming up with, oh, wow, this is what I was talking about 20 years ago. Can you believe it? Yes, I can believe it. But the way out is to fight this battle.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yes, my alma mater, Harvard Divinity School, and the entire university at Harvard, from NPR, the Trump administration freezes more than $2.2 billion after Harvard rejects its demands.
Which is, easier.
Adorable. Yes.
It's easier when you have, what did you call that amount of money?
I said that is a squirrel feeding money in Harvard Yard. Yeah. The squirrels at Harvard have their own endowments. and it's a big issue among alumni that Harvard has become a trust fund and not a university.
It's embarrassing. It's
embarrassing. We can fund 15 Harvard classes across the country with the interest and not touch the principal. So, yes, Harvard, unlike some universities, can afford to say, fuck you, Trump.
Yep.
And remember that. That's part of, they're not being courageous here.
Yeah.
They're looking at the dollar numbers and saying, yeah, 2.2 billion, fuck you.
We can ride this out. Right.
We can ride this out. Yeah. And I'm sure there's going to be a fundraising letter coming.
Count on it.
Count on it. So, and this is from our very own governor here in Illinois. Quote, no one should be above the law, most especially the president. Ignoring a Supreme Court ruling to facilitate Kilmar Abrego Garcia's return isn't just cruel, it's unconstitutional. They're saying the quiet part aloud. If they get away with it now, they'll do it to anyone, unquote. Mm-hmm. Another thing that's going to kill the Trump regime is the economy. Hundreds of books have been written about how the Nazi regime worked, and all the dictatorial tools they used to build their infrastructure and their war machine. But it's fair to say that the Nazis propped up their economy and kept their people fed the same way kings and dictators had been doing it since the beginning of history, by invading their neighbors and plundering the conquered territories.
Yeah, that's how Rome became an empire. Went from republic to empire.
Take all the stuff. They stole it.
They took all the gold, all the slaves, all the land, and suddenly everybody, well, the upper class were very, very rich. Yeah. And it drove down labor costs because you had a bunch of slaves. So suddenly you need to have an empire to protect. But it's always been that way.
Yep. This is from Wikipedia. Quote, cut off from foreign sources of capital, Germany paid for World War II through taxes and ruthless exploitation of occupied regions. Levies on conquered peoples amounted to 40% of the income raised by internal taxation, and 42% of that tribute came from France. The Nazis stole an estimated 4 billion Reichsmarks worth of wealth from Jews during the Holocaust, primarily through confiscation of property, business, and assets. This included a wide range of items from land and buildings to valuable possessions and even bank accounts. During the war, as Germany acquired control of new territories by direct annexation, by military administration, or by installing puppet governments in defeated countries, these new territories were forced by the Nazi administration to sell raw materials and agricultural products to German buyers at extremely low prices. Unquote.
And there was the German program of Lebensraum, I believe it was called, which was living space.
Yep.
Which, you know, as the Russians did slash and burn, there wasn't a lot left in that territory for people to use or to take. But the whole plan was, we're going to fund our government and make us rich by stealing from everybody else. So you all can probably see where the problem is that Trump might have, because despite all of his saber rattling about Canada and Greenland, none of the tools the fascist government used to prop up their economies are available to him. First, there are no new lands for Trump to conquer. He is not going to conquer places that will give him great wealth and property and living space. There's no cheap land to give away to the masses, to the MAGA masses. There's no importation of slave labor. In fact, the central pillar of Trump's reckless mass deportation regime is to get rid of cheap labor and scare off any potential emigre with a lick of sense. So nothing in this economy makes any sense from growing the actual prosperity of your empire.
Right.
Second,
or helping MAGA get richer.
Right. This is because, second, Trump doesn't give a shit about this country at all. He hates, this is a bust out. This is a place for him to rip off and move on to the next thing. He's a fucking locust. In fact, by all appearances, he is trying very hard to destroy this country as quickly as possible. And the stupids are letting him do it because they don't know nothing but what Trump tells them.
Yeah.
The only economic bludgeons he has in his bag, which are tariffs and tax cuts, are designed to personally enrich him and his cronies and screw everybody else. And the people who rallied to Trump's banner weren't German peasants of a century ago who were crushed by their losses in the Great War and inflation so bad that the same wheelbarrow of Deutschmarks that could buy you a loaf of bread at noon could barely purchase a half a loaf by sundown. They were hungry, they were desperate, they were beaten, they were afraid, and they were looking for someone to blame. And that's what Hitler gave them, someone to blame. MAGA meatheads have never experienced anything like that level of privation or desperation anywhere outside their fox-drunk imaginations. You know, white people are the most depressed. White Americans are the most depressed people in history. No president's ever been more oppressed than I have. Just whiny bitches, every one of them. And over the course of time, all the culture war bread and circuses the right uses to keep their bigots and imbeciles angry and distracted will never be enough to cover up the hard math of disastrous economic policies. Just like 20 years ago, eventually all the shrieking the right did about us liberals being America-hating, terrorist-loving scum could no longer hide the brutal realities of Bush's disastrous war in Iraq. So it's good to remind ourselves of just exactly who it was that brought this madness down on our heads twice.
But I didn't know until this day that it was Barzini all along.
No, it was not Barzini. And just for the record, it's not Tessio either, because Tessio was always smarter. It was the stupids that caused this. And sure, there are plenty of cowards and collaborators and grifters and lunatics, but the reliable core of the modern GOP by design has always been the bigots and the imbeciles. And right now, Reality is at the stupid's front door, demanding to be let in.
Mm-hmm.
Knock, knock, knock. Who is it?
Knock,
Your
knock,
fucking
knock.
future. The future you voted for, asshole.
See, this of all the things is, and we've talked about this before, is the thing that makes me most depressed, is the extent to which everyone apart from the two of us and our listeners is going to forget all of this.
Oh, what? What? I don't remember nothing. Well,
No, I think we got to give a Republican a chance. You know, we need change.
yeah. Well,
And the media will go right along with it because tax cuts or change or novelty or whatever.
well,
We're gonna forget all of it.
people say next time will be different, but it only is different if we make it different. And
Yeah.
we're going to keep doing what we've been doing all this time, which is every time they try to pretend the past never happened and gloss over it and let's move on and both sides, we scream as loud as we can. And I got to say, each time that has happened, the voices on our side yelling, stop it, you're lying about the past, it's not fucking both sides, have gotten a little bit louder. So,
Yeah, they have. And there have been more people in the mainstream environment who have had to adopt that because we're screaming. Yes, that's true.
In fact, in a few moments, there'll be a quiz that'll surprise you.
Oh, yeah.
About-
That might surprise you.
Might
Yes.
shock you, who knows? But
Right. But let's do a FAFO while we're at it. In the Atlantic this week, we find the story of Nicholas Gilbert, a farmer in upstate New York near the Canadian border. He had just gotten a shipment of livestock feed with a $2,200 tariff surcharge attached. He can't increase the price of the milk he sells because that price is set by the local co-op. And he can't cut his cow's feed. There are no other suppliers nearby, and going farther away would be more expensive. When he got the delivery, he stared at the tariff and was stunned. After all, isn't his Canadian supplier responsible for paying that? Isn't that what the dear leader promised him? I'm not even sure it's legal. We contracted for the price on delivery. If your price of fuel goes up or your truck breaks down, that's not my problem. That's what the contract's for. Yes, Mr. Gilbert believes that his Canadian supplier should be responsible for an import tax that President Donald Trump slapped them with. But of course, Republican voters dismissed all the warnings they got about Trump as fake news because only Trump tells the truth, and Trump was right about everything. And now Gilbert's expenses are so high, he may soon be out of business. Now, here's some audio that we believe all the Mr. Gilberts in this country should be required to listen to over and over again, Clockwork Orange style.
We're seeing people stay quiet. We are seeing organizations stay quiet. We are seeing those who are capitulating to clearly unconstitutional threats. And these are the things that we are witnessing each day in these last few months in our country. And it understandably creates a great sense of fear. Because, there were many things that we knew would happen. Many things. I'm not here, so I told you so. I swore I wasn't going to say that. But I'll say this. Fear has a way of being contagious. Okay? When one person has fear, it has a way of spreading to those around them and spreading. And we are witnessing that, no doubt. But I say this also, my dear friends, courage is also contagious. Courage is also contagious.
as former Vice President Kamala Harris said, courage is also contagious. And
she also promised she wasn't going to say, I told you so.
Yeah. I was so tempted to say, let's just cut it off there. Or let's just put Sam Jackson in there as well. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. But, I want to think I'm a better person than to rub this poor man's nose in the fact that he's a moron who voted for his own economic suicide. But I'm not. I used to be. Long ago, I was a different person. But I want to see these people suffer enough to stop being monsters. Just sit down and shut up and let grown-ups fix all the shit you broke. And since Trump's self-made economic disaster will play a vital part in bringing down the GOP, let's check in to see how things are working out. What are we, 3 months into this disaster now? This is from Paul Krugman. Maybe you've heard of him. Quote, Herbert Hoover, move over. The 31st president has long been the patron saint of bad economic management. But while Hoover responded badly to the coming of the Great Depression, he didn't cause the slump. By contrast, it seems more and more likely that Donald Trump will single-handedly push the solid economy he inherited from Joe Biden into crisis. This is, as Trump might say, disastrous policy like nobody has seen before, unquote.
This is from CNBC from April 12th. Trump exempts phones, computers, chips from new tariffs. Quote, President Donald Trump exempted smartphones, computers, and other tech devices and components from his reciprocal tariffs. New guidance from U.S. Customs and Border Protection shows. The guidance issued late Friday evening comes after Trump earlier this month imposed 145% tariffs on products from China, a move that threatened to take a toll on tech giants like Apple, which makes iPhones and most of its other products in China. The guidance also includes exclusions for other electronic devices and components, including semiconductors, solar cells, flat panel TV displays, flash drives, and memory cards.
1 day later.
This is from the AP the very next day, April 13th. Trump's Commerce Secretary says new electronics tariffs exemptions are temporary. Chip tariffs are coming. Quote, tariff exemptions announced Friday on electronics like smartphones and laptops are only a temporary reprieve until the Trump administration develops a new tariff approach specific to the semiconductor industry, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said on Sunday. White House officials, including President Donald Trump himself, spent Sunday downplaying the significance of exemptions that lessen but won't eliminate the effect of U.S. tariffs on imports of popular consumer devices and their key components. They're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two, Lutnick told ABC's This Week on Sunday. And the vessel with the pestle and the brood that is true, and oh my God.
The flagon with the dragon.
It's just fucking, they're throwing darts at a fucking dartboard. And somebody he's running around.
Lutnick is a fucking idiot.
Yeah, well, they're all
He's
fucking
a
idiots.
fucking idiot.
No. Anyway, the article continues. Trump added to this confusion hours later, declaring on social media that there were no exceptions at all because the goods are just moving to a different bucket and will still face the 20% tariff as part of his administration's move to punish China for its role in fentanyl trafficking, unquote.
1 day later.
From The Guardian, the day after that, April 14th, Trump warns exemptions on smartphones, electronics will be short-lived, promises future tariffs. Quote, the U.S. president has said no one is getting off the hook as he promises to launch a national security investigation into the semiconductor sector, unquote.
This asshole has had 9 years to look into the semiconductor sector. All he wants. And but it's like healthcare. It'll be a great plan. It'll cost pennies. It'll be up in 2-3 weeks. And you expect the MAGA idiots just to forget that. We don't, but he does.
No.
Finally, from the New Republic this week, this is just the cherry on top. Quote, thanks to a technical glitch, Donald Trump's tariffs haven't even been collected at the U.S. ports. Oh, no. On Friday, U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported that an entry code in the U.S. system for American ships to use to have their freight exempted from tariffs isn't working. And the issue, very much like Trump's cabinet, it isn't working. And the issue is being reviewed, like everything else. We're being reviewed. As a result, no tariffs are being collected by the U.S. government for the time being, unquote. So just take a breath. Everyone relax. It's a fucking clown show, and they all have nuclear weapons, and they all have flamethrowers, and it's horrible. So we're all asking the same question. All of us resistance people are asking the same question everyone else is asking. What the hell is the plan? And while we are not sure what the plan will turn out to be, we do know what any plan must deliver.
You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word: victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be. For without victory there is no survival. Let that be realized.
In this instance, Winston Churchill speaks for me. Both of us.
Yeah.
Any plan must deliver victory. The Republican Party, from its fascist leadership to its grassroots, is no longer something with which decent people can make common cause. They're fascists. The whole of it, all of it, has to go. Root and branch. No more both sides. No more we go high. No more my fellow Americans. These are not my fellow Americans. These are fascist enemies of my country. If your plan has as its long-term objective the destruction of the American Fascist Party and all of its infrastructure, you have our attention. If you still think there's a decent, vital, viable Republican Party somewhere in there and you want us to spend our precious time and energy mining for it, you can fuck right off.
You can fuck right off if you want us to waste our time with kumbaya bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast is not safe for work.
That's why we have no commercials. Because
And now bamboo sheets.
yeah. Well, yeah, and you know my favorite, right? My favorite of all the last year was on the Bulwark, a live read of the vitality of the Washington Post and why it's very important that you subscribe to the Washington Post. And the Washington Post
yeah.
And the next day, it's like in the comments, it was like, geez, the Washington Post sure is fucked, aren't they? Yeah, there are a bunch of, dilettante scriveners, people who just are taking dictation from Donald Trump. What the fuck happened to that paper? I don't know.
Yeah.
I heard on your ad yesterday that they're awesome and I should spend my money on them. Anyway.
Yep. Well, today I want to share something I stole from Substacker Anne Helen Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
And I have edited this a little bit for podcast reading, but I just thought this was a terrific ask, and so I'm stealing it from her. Big secret. I can see the back-end stats on this podcast. That means I know that many of the people who listen to this podcast the most aren't paid subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many reasons why that might be the case, but if you have the means and you value our work here and want to keep this podcast the way it is, ad-free and uncensored, please consider becoming a Patreon or donating via PayPal. Maybe you're like me and say, fine, I'll do it next time. I can't remember my credit card special code. My wallet is all the way across the room. That's deeply, hilariously relatable. Maybe this time you'll go get your credit card. We appreciate you and your huffy little fine, I'll do it walk, because we too have done it so many times for the stuff we value and love.
Absolutely.
And our limit is $5. I mean, for us in our income range, $5 is what we can do. We do that for our congresswoman because she's a Democratic downstate congresswoman. We send her $5 a month.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for considering that. Getting up, going to your wallet, get out your credit card, $5 a month.
Yeah.
It makes a difference for us. And you'll feel better too.
And thank you for that.
And thank you.
Thank you for doing that. Finally, I got a little pop quiz. I promised it earlier, and here it comes, because I'm doing this thing on my blog where I check back with the past as it happened 20 years ago. I don't mean generally 20 years ago, like broadly speaking, this happened sometime 20 years ago. I'm going back to the day and date of April 14th, April 16th, April 20th. I'm not doing it every day because that would just drive me crazy and wouldn't be like new content, which I know that my readers appreciate. But it is absolutely chilling and hilarious and kind of even a shock to me how long the bad habits of Republicans, conservatives, and the media have been going on in exactly the same way they're going on now. And that is what is so refreshing about pulling out a post. The Post tomorrow, I will give you a hint about the headline of the Post tomorrow. That article where David Brooks wrote all about blowjobs. In the New York Times, David Brooks writes about blowjobs.
Oh, my God.
That was April 16th, 2005, and that'll be appearing in a blog near you.
Driftglass.blogspot.com.
Yeah, and it's not just all about David Brooks, I swear, but this one just like, oh, yeah, I remember when that happened. Oh, God, why does that man still have a job again? Oh, that's right. Anyway, here's the pop quiz. What sort of wild, flame-throwing liberal said this, and when did they say it, Blue Gal? Quote, polarization is not our problem. Where did this come from? Pundits and politicians say it incessantly. Our political system is broken because we are so polarized. They tell us that polarization prevents us from passing legislation or reaching a compromise or getting along. This is bunk. Now, you know I didn't write it because I would not use that four-letter word.
No, you would not use the word bunk.
Yeah. Not to mention a dangerous false equivalence which minimizes the threat of authoritarianism. Oh, my goodness. If you didn't know better, you would think polarization descended from on high, a plague for which no one party is responsible. This deliberate obfuscation of our political situation, which is a nice rhyme there, suits the corporate media's obsession with moral equivalence and contrived balance, unquote. That's
Wow.
Some vicious shit there. Vicious shit.
Yeah.
Now, was that in 2005 or 6 or 8? Was that Digby? Or maybe Steve Gilliard wrote that. I don't know. No, that was former Washington Post conservative op-ed columnist and recent creator of a brand new media corporation called The Contrarian, Jennifer Rubin, this week, that showed up in
This fucking week.
Oh my God, polarization. Where the hell did this come from? Now, Jen Rubin has done a lot more atoning than a whole bunch of other never-Trumpers. She has admitted, yes, this has been a problem. She didn't lie about the past. She didn't lie about, we never knew this all coming. She basically said, we fucked up real bad, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back and read her stuff, writing during the Obama administration, honest to God, she was writing Ben Shapiro level. Barack Obama is the worst, most untrustworthy, most race card playing son of a bitch who ever existed. So when I hear her talking about the corporate media in such harsh
the Washington Post, who was your employer for 30 years?
I mean, the people who paid into your 401k, the retirement fund you're going to live on for the rest of your life, those people, that corporate media, you know what, Jen? Here's what will make you feel better. Take your credit card out of your purse and come and subscribe to the Professional, and I will send you a framed copy of your Absolution. You can buy Absolution from the Professional Love podcast. Now, sliding scale, it'll have to be more than $5 because you've done more than $5 worth of damage. But you can buy an indulgence from the Professional Love podcast for the you search your heart for your level of guilt and complicity, and then make out a check in that amount. And we will send you a framed copy.
We got news for you, Jen. It's 4 figures at least.
Yeah, it's 4 figures at least. And not low 4 figures, I might add.
No. Mid to high 4 figures, Jen Rubin. Yeah.
Oh, and you wanted to add something about also.
Well, we did an entire podcast about polarization in January of this year, reflecting on our years of both fighting both-siderism, because Webster Dictionary put out as their word of the year for 2024, polarization. So she might be just reacting to this very late, months later. But hey, Jen, episode 866 from January 7th.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Hey, Driftglass, let's do a news roundup.
All right, after you.
Trump suggested that he'll deport violent U.S. citizens to El Salvador, a move legal experts called pretty obviously illegal and unconstitutional. If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem, Trump said, adding, we're studying the laws right now. He claimed the plan would cut costs and boost security, praising El Salvador's mega prison and asking President Nayib Bukele to build more. Immigration lawyers said no law allows the government to exile its own citizens and warned the courts must intervene. U.S. citizens may not be deported to imprisonment abroad, said David Beer of the Cato Institute.
The notoriously liberal Cato Institute. Although, to be fair, I can think of at least one homegrown criminal I would have no trouble shipping off to a foreign gulag
black bagging
for the rest of his fucking life.
There's a few people in that administration who are at the top of my list. Stephen Miller, one of them. Yeah. Who you know has come up with this. So much of the monster behavior that's going on is coming straight from Stephen Miller.
Is the Spandau prison still up and running where they kept Albert Speer until he died? I mean, the Hague must have a prison somewhere. And I'd love to see this asshole in an orange jumpsuit along with his cronies serving time for the rest of their lives there because they have earned every bit of it.
War crimes, yep.
The State Department found no evidence linking a Tufts PhD student to terrorism or anti-Semitism before ICE agents detained her, according to an internal memo. The memo said DHS agents failed to justify its claim that Ramisa Ozturk supported Hamas. Still, Secretary of State Marco Rubio revoked her visa under a separate immigration rule that requires no evidence or explanation. This was done to chill her speech, Ozturk's lawyer told a federal judge. Ozturk, unaware her visa was revoked, was arrested by masked agents, shackled, and flown to a Louisiana detention center. A judge in Vermont is now weighing if her detention violates the Constitution.
Trump blamed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. One day after a Russian missile strike on Palm Sunday killed at least 35 Ukrainian civilians.
I believe the longer quote was, if Joe Biden weren't so incompetent and Zelensky weren't so incompetent, the war would never have started and blah, 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 blah. Just an absolute, thoroughly evil human being with no redeeming features at all. And part of that evil is reflected in the fact that consumer sentiment fell to 50.8 in April. This is the second lowest reading since the University of Michigan began tracking it in 1952.
The Trump administration wants to make $9 billion in immediate cuts to NPR, PBS, and foreign aid. The plan ends all federal funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and cancels foreign aid grants managed by USAID. It also eliminates smaller agencies like the U.S. Institute for Peace. The package will go to Congress on April 28th, triggering a 45-day period where the White House can legally withhold the funds. Trump argues the funds contradict his agenda and rejects the 1974 law. What happened in 1974, Driftglass?
Something about the Olympics, I think. I'm not sure. I could be wrong about that.
No, it was Nixon resigning.
That's right. Nixon resigning and the whole...
And there was a whole bunch of reform passed between 74 and 76 to prevent Nixonian behavior. Well, Trump rejects the 1974 law requiring the president to spend money already approved by Congress.
I'm going to remember that I reject the law thing next time I'm pulled over for a traffic ticket.
I'm going to remember my pinned post at Blue Sky, which is, Bosco says, hang tight. The anti-Trump backlash is going to be lit.
It's going to be lit, yeah. I know I reject that law, officer. I'm sorry. I just reject that law out of hand. And I have people reviewing that law, so out of my way.
Yeah, we're reviewing the laws.
Yes. So give me the bottle back, and I'll let me continue driving drunk down the middle of the street.
Yeah, right.
And finally, in the national news, this isn't the last of the national news, but the last we're going to do today. Trump claimed he got every answer right on a cognitive test during his annual physical exam, but couldn't recall the name of the test. Derp, 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 derp. Grandpa Syphilis strikes again.
Grandpa Syphilis strikes again.
Yep.
In local news from Capital News, Illinois, quote, I love this story. Amid global tariff war, Pritzker vows to be stable trading partner with United Kingdom. Governor UK signed memorandum focusing on manufacturing, energy, and technology. Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois vowed Tuesday that Illinois will remain a stable trading partner with nations around the world, despite President Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs that have disrupted global markets. He is becoming a shadow president, folks.
Yeah. Yes, he is.
Look, there are a lot of uncertainties at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of instability. There's no doubt, Pritzker said. But this, meaning Illinois, is a stable state. This is a state that thrives on certainty and allows our businesses to do well. And so we look forward to maintaining that status. This action will inspire greater dialogue, cooperation, and innovation on issues of critical importance to both of our nations, from climate change to infectious disease controls to sustainable agriculture, Pritzker said. It will strengthen our existing lines of trade and investment while expanding into new ventures in each of our emerging high-growth sectors, advanced manufacturing, life sciences, finance, clean energy, and beyond. In 2024, according to the governor's office, Illinois exported more than $2.6 billion worth of goods to the UK, making it the state's 8th largest export partner. And I will add that Pritzker has already met with Mexican authorities as well.
Absolutely.
Along these lines. Exports from Illinois include chemicals, computer products, and manufactured and fabricated metal products. British firms, meanwhile, employ about 96,000 people in Illinois. If there's one thing J.B. Pritzker loves, it's jobs in Illinois.
And,
he loves jobs.
And you go through this article and it just checks every box. Stability, certainty, business, manufacturing, industries of tomorrow, our friends across the pond, 96,000 jobs, billions of dollars in trade. It's everything every Republican said they wanted 2 minutes ago from international relations. This is literally the rising tide that lifts the boats. And J.B. Pritzker saying this might as well just be saying, fuck you, Donald Trump.
Fuck you, Donald Trump. You're a failure. You are a failure. Hashtag fail.
You failed fake business asshole. You need to juice the markets to get rich and hang out with murderers and psychopaths. Come to Illinois. We're what America should be.
We make stuff and hire people. We are a real economy and a stable economy. Yeah. I'm old enough to remember when Republicans really super cared about human trafficking.
Oh, yeah.
All those QAnon assholes are all real quiet all of a sudden.
About a lot of things. I've noticed on especially local social media, a whole lot of people have gotten real quiet recently because it feels like, again, Iraq circa 2005 when, holy shit, I was the number one, I'm imputing to them, they were the number one cheerleaders screaming up and down what a genius George Bush was. And when it all started to go south, it sounded like this. The sound of silence from all of those people who swore that we were the bad guys, we were the alarmists, and they were the wise ones who followed Bush right off a fucking cliff. Well, the wind whistling past your ears, Mr. Northern Canadian trade food guy who can't figure out why his prices have gone up. That's the sound of you falling off a cliff that you walked yourself to the edge of and threw yourself off of because you love the dear leader so much.
Yep. Deep breath, everybody. We will get through this. Feel free to write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
And I'm going to go off script here by going exactly on script. So that was just for my wife. That one was just for her. Because please don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is, in fact, our job. If you can spare $5 a month or more, please spare $5 a month or more. Talking to you, Jen Rubin, at patreon.com/proleftpod. Please also share our show with Jennifer on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get Jennifer to listen. Please make her listen to our podcast, and thank you for doing that.
I already replied to her on Blue Sky with a link to our podcast about polarization.
Those people,
I did.
Those people don't want to talk to us, Blue Gal. As nice as we are,
the contrarians don't want to talk to us. We could have them on our show.
No, none of those people want to talk to anybody with any memory prior to 2016.
I'll bet.
Yeah,
I'll bet. And thank you. I think I said this before. That the person who tithed their tax return and sent us 10% of their tax refund as a tithe. That was very nice.
That was really sweet.
It was a couple $100, but it really, wow. Like, you got to understand, when we get a $200 donation, time stops in this house. And one of us runs to the other one in the room. Did you see? We
do the whole Charlie Bucket golden ticket dance down the street.
It's a golden ticket. Yes.
We got a golden ticket. It's going to be a great day. Da-da-da-da. Don't know the words to the rest of the song. That's okay. And then we run home real quick, and people are like, don't lose that $200, Drift Glass. And then on the way home, Slugworth, who's actually, I guess, Jen Rubin in this thing, I'm not sure, stops and say, "What about you get to the factory and you give me some good information about the stuff you did 20 years ago? Pass that along to me. I'll rewrite it. It'll be glorious."
A David Brooks column from 20 years ago.
It'll be glorious. Let me rewrite it. Call it my own. It'll be glorious. And then you run home, and it's all been a horrible dream. And eventually we get in an elevator, I guess, and we go to the White House.
And there are 3 cats on the bed, all grandparents, right?
Yes. Oh, I can't go anywhere.
Wondering when dinner is.
We showed them the golden ticket, and suddenly Boss goes up on his hind legs going, "Let's go, Drift Glass."
Yeah, I'm ready. Hey, Drift Class, how are the internet kitties this week?
Well, Blue Gal, if you must know, the internet kitties have decided chasing laser pointers is boring compared to chasing all the red flags popping up all over the Trump administration.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.